Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Showing Up to Life podcast and YouTube channel. My name is Art Burns, feeling a little bit better than I was yesterday, and really excited to be here with you today. You know, I told you yesterday the last few days have been really kind of really difficult in the world of Art Burns coaching here, but we're righting the ship, we're getting on top of things, and we're moving forward in a way that is embracing and practice and putting into use the things that I talk about with you here, and that's the thing. It's like sometimes when I'm going through things like difficult things, I'm thinking about all of you, and I'm like, this is what I tell them on the podcast, and this is why I have to follow my own, my own advice. And sometimes that's a really hard thing to do, by the way. I mean, I'll just own that and be honest here for a second with you that there are times where I have to pause and kind of stop myself and say to myself, well, hey, dude, this is what you say every day to your clients and the people on your, in your YouTube tribe and your podcast tribe. Like this is what you talk about all the time. Look at what you're doing. You're doing the opposite of what you tell people to do all the time. And I have to check myself, and for that I feel grateful for you. I mean, I'm always telling you how much this podcast and YouTube channel mean to me, not just as a means of getting out and doing my thing, but how much your being there makes this a thing. It really does. And so so I just wanted to kind of again own that in a bit, that that nobody's perfect, but that's the whole thing, right? And that's what I try to talk about in this podcast. And here we go, another segue, is that it's never about being perfect, right? Life is not perfect. Life doesn't stop to be perfect, right? Life is a continuously emerging and unfolding experience that happens one moment at a time, moment by moment. And so there is no perfect. What there is there's an interaction with that emerging, unfolding quality of the moment by moment experience. And what that means is that we don't strive to be anything particular. What we do is we try to be aware and to maintain our balance and our grounding throughout the ups and downs of life so that we can manage as things flow. Right? As we interact with life, as we show up to our moment by moment experience, we come to be able to kind of accept and manage through that acceptance and the presence and the curiosity and the compassion that I'm talking about all the time. Through those qualities that are derived through practice, we are able to sort of absorb this emergent, moment by moment, subjective experience, and do so in a way that allows us to notice, okay, look, the actions that I'm taking right now are working against my happiness, right? You can't see that if you don't do the mindfulness practices. So even though it might seem like, in our sort of linear, sort of classic Western mind, when we fall off, when we find ourselves doing something that is not mindful, it's very easy for us to call that a failure, to say, oh, well, you've failed now. And to be sure, I mean, something that Adam and I talk about on my other podcast, it seems to come up a lot, is that, you'll have family members or friends or coworkers who will even say to you outwardly, explicitly say, oh yeah, you're really being mindful right now. I mean, I had my father say that to me a couple of years ago. That's a whole different story, but which I've told you here before, at least part of it. But yeah, I mean, that's the thing, right? That it's really easy for us and those around us to see a temporary and impermanent, non-mindfulness treatment or non-mindfulness approach to something. It's easy to see that as a failure, but it's not. All it is an opportunity to come back. That's all it is. And once we start seeing the moment-to-moment experience in that way, right? In the way that it's not about getting it wrong or being a failure or screwing it up somehow, right? But instead, it's just a part of what your subjective experience is all about in this present moment. And that's all it is, right? And when we can see it that way, and this is at the heart of non-judging awareness, right? We see the experience as just an experience, right? It's not a good experience and it's not a bad experience. It's just an experience. It's just a subjective, moment by moment experience in the unfolding experience of my life. That's all it is. You know, the way really one of my favorite ways to illustrate non-judging awareness, right? You know, if you stand me against a white wall, right, and take a picture of me, right? There's no way for you to tell, and there's no markings on the wall or anything like that. It's just a plain white wall with me standing there at a certain distance. You know, you take a picture. There's no way for you to tell how tall or how short I am, right? There's literally no way. There's no reference for you to judge that by, right? So I'm just a person, right? Now, if you put Shaquille O'Neal next to me, well, I'm going to appear to be maybe a short person. If you take Shaquille away and you bring in, a horse jockey, then I'm likely to appear to be a tall person, right? But again, without any of those references, without anything to judge my height against, I'm just a person, right? So an experience is only a good experience when you place it next to a bad experience or what you see as a bad experience. But then we can take that further and say, what is a bad experience? Is it an uncomfortable experience? Well, isn't an uncomfortable experience teaching you something? Is it a damaging experience? Well, isn't a damaging experience teaching you something? So therefore, is it bad? I wouldn't consider it bad. In fact, if it's teaching me something, I would consider it a positive experience, even if it's uncomfortable. You see how we can open up the vocabulary and never judge the experience itself as either good or bad, right? And this is important because when we judge something as good or bad, what's happening in our brain, right? There's this little thing in your brain, this little node. You actually have two of them on the either side of your brain. It's called the amygdala, and it's called the amygdala, which is the Greek word for almond, because it is about the size and shape of an almond. And this little thing in your brain is just watching out all day, every day. It's like putting the most nervous person you can think of in front of a door and saying, watch everybody who walks by this door. And if you think anything is suspicious about a single person, I want you to sound this alarm. That's like what the amygdala is all about, right? So it's just watching and listening to everything that you're seeing, everything you're doing, everything you're hearing, everything you're smelling, tasting, touching, and everything you're thinking and all the emotions you're feeling. The amygdala is watching it all. And so when you judge something as being bad, the amygdala says, uh-oh, I got to start pulling the alarm cords here because something's bad, and bad is dangerous. And we got to get away from bad. We don't like bad. And so now you start closing down, because the thing that the amygdala does, the other parts of the brain that are hearing the amygdala are the parts of the brain that pull your ability to think clearly, to think openly, to think intentionally. It's pulling the energy away from those areas and giving the energy to your very automatic memory-based activity or functioning of your brain, right? So you do things automatically, reactively, and hastily. And in those hastily reactive automatic decisions, there's usually consequences that then the amygdala has another thing to alarm. And you keep going that way, right? And so part of what mindfulness is all about, and I know that there's a few of you who are in the midst of my self-compassion and mindfulness workshop, and certainly self-compassion really ties into this concept, right? But mindfulness and self-compassion allow us to hold these times of struggle in a way that doesn't feel shameful. Right? And that's the important thing, right? Because again, if something's bad, if something's a failure, if something's screwed up, that invites shame in. And again, once shame is there, all kinds of changes are starting to happen that limit your abilities, your cognitive abilities. It literally is shutting down, you know, avenues of thought that might result in a more positive outcome for you, right? And so that's why, and in the next segment, I'm going to talk more specifically about this. But pardon me, I brush my teeth before every one of these. Just in case I have some, like, tea stains or something. And so sometimes my mouth gets a little dry from that. So pardon me. I had to take a little sip of water. But anyway, the idea here is to look at your struggles, whatever those struggles are, to look at them through that non-judging awareness and through the self-compassion that allows you to see that these struggles are something you're experiencing not because of who you are, not because of something that's wrong with you, but because of the things that have happened in your life, whatever those things are, right? Those experiences that you have had are what makes you interact with the world around you in a certain way, right? So that is to say, I just saw 11:11 on my phone on 11:11, and that happened for the second time today. So I just want to let you know that, because this time it's the timer. About an hour ago was the clock. But anyway, pardon me. When we experience a struggle, right, that struggle feels like a struggle because of the experiences that we've had, right? So there's something that maybe is unresolved in you. There's something that's triggered. It might be part of a childhood trauma, which is something that happened to me yesterday, right? And I'm going to get into a specific story about that in the next segment. But basically, an interaction between my wife and my daughter triggered something in me, would not have triggered something in 99% of the other people that I know in the world, but it triggered something in me. Right? Now, that's not because I have a brain that works differently from those people. It's not because I have different cellular biological makeup than those other people. It's because of my experiences. And it happened to be a very traumatic experience that was triggered by this thing that happened, right? And so it's not what's wrong with me that makes this particular experience a struggle for me. It's what's happened to me that makes this experience a struggle for me. And therefore, shame has no business here. Shame does not belong. Shame is inappropriate in this moment. Shame is only appropriate when you've done something that is wrong, right? You've made a mistake. You've hurt someone advertently or inadvertently. You have created a situation that is somehow negative in some way. So shame is actually a very helpful emotion in that sense, because shame allows us to feel the wrongness of what we've done so that we can learn from doing that, to not do that thing again, right? But the problem is that when shame is not appropriate, well, then we're learning misguided lessons. We're just creating confusion. We're not creating clarity. And that's where mindfulness and self-compassion come in. As I experience a struggle, I can pause for a moment and I can acknowledge that this is my struggle for a reason. And it's okay that I'm struggling with this for a reason. In fact, as soon as I recognize it in that way, as soon as I pull shame out of the equation and look at it as just an experience. It's not next to Shaquille O'Neal or the horse jockey. It's just on its own an experience that I can observe for exactly what it is. And when I can do that, that's when I can learn from it. I'm going to tell you more about this in the next segment. All right, I'll see you over there. All right, welcome back to our segment number 2 on November 11th, 11/11. Happy Veterans Day to all of you in the U.S. who celebrate this holiday. My sister's birthday is today, so we celebrate this holiday in a little bit of a different way. We don't have many veterans in my family, but we do have a girl who was born on Veterans Day. But anyway, I want to share, I think I'm stalling a little bit because I'm about to share a little bit of a difficult experience with you. Okay, so my daughter and my wife have this kind of this sort of arrangement that I'm going to call a love-hate arrangement here. It's not a love-hate relationship at all, but I mean, we don't have any hate for our daughter. I mean, we love her and our son, even though they are difficult at times. There's nothing but love that happens in this family, and that's important. Okay, and we can talk about that more. If you, any of you parents out there who would like to talk about mindful parenting, I would love to hear from you, because I am at this point, I'm trying to kind of maybe get a couple of different Saturday programs going at the same time. I realize that I have no other appointments on Saturday, so I think I'm going to try to keep it that way and just make Saturday like the group session, the group coaching session day. And so if there's, and by making group coaching sessions, I can make them very inexpensive for individuals. Okay. Currently I'm at like $88 for an 8-week program. I can, if necessary, I can even, discount that further. So if it's something that you're interested in, let me know. Okay. And if I get enough people interested, that's how we can make something happen. But this is a really important parenting point, because, I'm a strong believer that, especially when it comes to things like trauma, but also when it comes to parenting, even without trauma, right? That when we find situations in which we struggle, and this goes back to the last segment where I was talking about struggling without shame, right? It's about seeing our struggles not as something that's a failure or a bad thing, but actually something we can be grateful for, something that's a positive force in our life. Because the thing is that, whether you're talking about healing from trauma or you're talking about just wanting to be an effective and positive parent, a positive influence in your child's life as a parent, right? It requires that you learn from your experiences, right? Or better yet, it's even as Dr. Gabor Mate says in a course that I'm taking with him right now, he says that lessons, that struggles and difficulties come along for us because we need to learn about them, right? And this is a really, really interesting concept for me, and I want to talk about this a little bit, because what happened yesterday with my wife and my daughter was this super simple, like almost like nothing, like literally, most people wouldn't have even noticed what happened. But yet for me, it sent me into this tailspin of emotions. It really triggered my trauma. Now, the thing that happened, as I said, it's this love-hate arrangement that they have, that my daughter has taken her, we homeschool our kids, so we don't get up to get on school buses and stuff like that. That's just not how our family does it. So we have a little bit more of a free kind of flowing morning, right? But my daughter has taken the initiative to kind of, she's kind of trying to take, she just turned 13. She's taking control of herself a little bit more, and so she set herself the sort of goal and the sort of, obligation even to wake up in the morning. She likes to, and I love it, because she likes to get up before everyone else, so she can have a quiet house and eat her breakfast that she makes for herself in quiet. And then she takes her shower, and she does all this before anybody's up. And I think that's wonderful. I think that's a beautiful, positive thing for a 13-year-old girl to be experiencing, right? It's very meditative. It's very soul. It's beautiful. And so she has to wake up at like 6:30 in the morning to do, or 6 o'clock, I think, in the morning. I think she wakes up at 6:30, and then the idea is that she takes her shower and then wakes my wife up, who she knows is going to take a little while to get out of bed, and then so she can make her breakfast. So then by the time mom gets up, it's like she's got her routine kind of underway and all that kind of stuff, right? My wife doesn't want to get up at 6:45, like not by a long shot, but she does. She does the best she can, right, for her daughter. That's, again, what it's all about. At least for us, it's our philosophy that we're living for the kids now. There'll be a time where we'll be able to sleep in again, so we make sacrifices for them. And so yesterday, and I don't know what time my wife got to sleep the night before, and I don't know what was going on with her, right? But there was something kind of what I perceived as dismissive in the way that, my daughter came in at 6:45, woke her up, and my wife kind of just rolled over and like almost like didn't acknowledge her. And I happened to catch this, and I happened to like look at my daughter, and she was like, "Oh, I guess I'll come back," kind of thing. Now, again, to most people, this would be like, okay, what's the big deal? Come back in 5 minutes. It's okay. I mean, your mother loves you. She tells you she loves you all the time. She never abuses you. She always does everything for you. The woman would jump off a bridge for you when you know that. And so 5 minutes either way is not a big deal, right? And to be sure, also, there are thousands of interactions that I've witnessed between the two of them that have not triggered me in any way. But this one, okay, all of a sudden, within 5 minutes of seeing that, my body was complete sympathetic nervous system activated, full on stress response, full on like wah 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 wah. Within an hour, I was hysterically crying, like literally like weeping and hollering in my weeping. That's how powerful it was for me. It was intense. And, to think that before I knew about mindfulness, before I was practicing mindfulness and self-compassion, to think that I wouldn't have known where all of this came from. I would have just gone to work in this state. Maybe I wouldn't have been crying like that because that comes from my acknowledgement, my understanding of the trauma, right? Because what's happened here is that seeing that brought me back to a time where I was 5 years old or so, and having my mother reject my overture of, hey, can you make me breakfast? Or, hey, I don't have any clean clothes or something for school or something like that. I don't mean to make it sound like my mother was completely neglectful, but there were times like that. And I guess I shouldn't, I guess she was pretty neglectful. Anyway, I don't want to get too deep into that kind of language here in this podcast. But the thing that happens is, though, and this is the way trauma works, and I think this might be really important for somebody out there to hear this. Okay, now I'm not here to diagnose anybody with trauma. I am not a professional or licensed therapist or counselor or psychologist or psychiatrist. None of that. Okay, I'm just a guy who's living his life, who understands through self-awareness and compassion what's going on in me. Okay. And so, but it might be true for you too, because like I just said, I never, ever, ever would have said that was connected in any way to my trauma. But here's how trauma works. And this is what I've understood through all of this reading here, right? And taking various courses and stuff like that, but not like 6 years of college and getting a degree and PhD and doctor and all that kind of stuff. That's not me. Just full disclosure. But what happens with trauma, you see, when I experienced that yesterday, right, in that instant where something kind of, two little neurons connect to each other and say, "Oh crap, did you see that?" Right? In that moment, the person in me who's saying, "Oh crap, did you see that?" kind of thing, right? Or experiencing that trigger, right? It's not the almost 53-year-old Art Burns who's read all these books and understands and practices mindfulness and has a supportive family around him, right? No, the person who was triggered in that moment is the person who is 5 years old, who lives within me, who was never fully healed, right? And so seeing that and having that neuronal connection like transports you back to being a small, helpless child who does not have agency over his own life. And so you feel helpless, you feel weak, you feel afraid. And that's why, again, getting back to what, I say all the time, if it's hysterical, it's historical, right? I wasn't weeping because my wife didn't jump out of bed at 6:45 in the morning, which is completely understandable. I was weeping because of all the times that I needed my mother and she wasn't there for me, right? That's what it was. And all the years of emotional abuse that I got from my father, and all of that came up in that one moment, right? But again, this is what's important here. This is what's important about this message. So listen to this, okay? If you don't take anything else but this out of this little episode here, this little segment, it's when I find myself triggered by an experience, that is the indication that, this is something that's unhealed in you. This is something you need to work on. This is something you need to understand through mindfulness and self-compassion. And in that soft, tender, beautiful, nourishing place of mindfulness and self-compassion, you can heal this. And when you heal this little thing, then the next time you see that interaction, you will not have that reaction again. I mean, it might not be the next one. It might take a few more as we keep practicing, because this stuff doesn't just, just like anything in life, it's not on or off. It's a flow. It's a transition. It's a spectrum. But that's what it is, right? When we find ourselves in these moments of struggle, as I said in the last segment, right, is that when we find ourselves struggling, that is a moment to not feel shame. That is a moment to say, oh, wow, life is teaching me something here. And this is a wonderful opportunity. It's not something to be ashamed of. It's not something to be afraid of. It's not something to be angry about. It's something to be grateful for. It's something to be engaged in. It's something to turn towards and embrace. Which, quite frankly, that's what I did yesterday. Just so you know, I put on my sweatpants, after because I attempted to get up and get dressed, and I got to do work. I have a couple of meetings and all that, and there are a couple of meetings that I was not able to cancel, that's for sure. And if you are someone who I did cancel with, I mean, please understand that I'm very sorry. It's not something that was personal. It's just I was not able to do it, and actually, I don't think I did keep any appointments yesterday. And that's what it is, I mean, that's, sometimes, and that's also part of and this is where the trauma kind of folds in on itself and kind of compounds itself, because in that same moment, I have my father saying, work, 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 so there's a conflict there too. And so I need to understand that motivation that I have, that again, shame that I'm feeling that I'm not getting my work done. And I got to pull the shame out of that and say, okay, look, this is something else that you can learn about, right? But remember, you cannot heal in a place that is not soft and tender and quiet, right? If you're the tissue of your, I mean, they literally call it soft tissue in your body, right? When you get a cut, it's the soft tissue that has been lacerated. And so what do? You cover it. You treat it with tenderness. You quiet it down. You don't go out. I mean, sometimes we have to, of course. You get a little cut on your hand, you just work through it. There is that too, right? But if it's a significant injury, we got to stop. We got to immobilize. We got to create an environment where healing can happen. And that is no different for you as your whole body, as your whole essence, with your energy and everything, right? That when you need to heal, when there is a rupture, when there's a laceration or a contusion of some sort, you must immobilize. You must bring yourself into a quiet and soft and nurturing place so that you can heal. And that includes putting on sweatpants and, watching some videos about trauma all day, And if that's what you have to do, that's what you have to do. Now, of course, if you gotta, some of us, we can't afford not to work for the day because we won't be able to pay our rent. So that's part of life too. I mean, I'm saying I'm very fortunate that I had the luxury of doing that yesterday. And again, I'm humble in the face of a couple of clients who are watching this who I didn't get to meet with yesterday, but we're going to make it up. And that's for sure. And I'll always, I'm going to give you 100% that I can. But in that moment, it was necessary. It was a sick day, right? And that is part of the societal issues that we're experiencing. Why can't we take a day off to heal, mentally, emotionally. And that, my friends, is part of the next program that I'm launching. Okay, starting not this Saturday, but Saturday the 20th, just before Thanksgiving. Okay, giving you a few days of practice before you get to seeing your families on Thanksgiving and talking about world events. I'm going to be launching this. Pardon me. I'm going to be launching this this program next Saturday to talk about just these kind of things, right? We're living in a world where we literally can't take a day off. If you live in America, there are people here in America who literally cannot afford to take a day off to heal themselves. So we're going to talk about that, and we're going to talk about what it means to live in that world. And we're going to talk about how mindfulness, and specifically compassion, and even more specifically self-compassion, but also forgiveness and lots of other ways in which I do my stuff. I want to talk about how all this can help us to guide ourselves through this really brutal world. And I hope that you can join me for this, okay? As I said yesterday, I'm going to do an early bird pricing between now and like next Monday, I think. Once the prices, once next Monday comes, the prices will go up to 88. For now, they're 66. Let me know if you're interested, okay? The first program I did, I got one person to sign up, and it was amazing. I'm not complaining about that at all. I mean, the person who I met with for 8 weeks, 12 weeks. Sorry, it was a 12-week program. I just looked at my notes from the program over there. So 12-week program, one-on-one. It was awesome. And then the next one that I launched, which was last like 4 or 5 weeks ago, had four people join, 5, and then 1 couldn't make it anymore. So 4 people are in that one. So, hey, if I can get 8 or maybe 16 in this one, I feel really, really good about the growth of this sort of thing. Not from a personal gain standpoint, but from the way that I can reach more people. Okay, that's my thing. That's why I show up every day and do this. And that's why I do what I do. So if you're interested, I would love to have you on board in this program. So I'm sure you have questions because I haven't really told you much about it, except that it's going to be a way to handle the brutality of the world in a way, right? Without letting that brutality get into our hearts and into our stress and nervous systems and stuff, right? It's a survival course, okay? So if you have any questions, you can email me at art@artburnscoaching.com, or you can set up a call. Right? As always, you have a free coaching, 45-minute coaching call that is waiting for you. It has your name on it. And in the description of this video, there's a link that you can use to schedule that call. And you can ask me about the new course, or you can ask me about anything you want. That's 45 minutes. That is your 45 minutes for me to help you to understand mindfulness, compassion, self-compassion, forgiveness, and how to integrate these into your life. As much as I can in 45 minutes, I will give you time. I can give you practices. I can give you lots of stuff in 45 minutes. You might be surprised. You can only find out one way. All right, everybody. I wish you well. I'll be back again tomorrow. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. I appreciate you, and I'll be back tomorrow with another episode. Take care, everybody.